Welcome to the San Antonio River Authority. My name is Laura Waldrum. I work here at SARA in the Community Relations Department. We're really happy to have y'all here today. At SARA, we are dedicated to enhancing and enriching life in the San Antonio River Basin, and this conservation easement program that the city is undertaking right now is really great for the aquifer, but it's also really great for San Antonio watershed. So we're here to educate y'all tonight, and if you have any questions for me, please give me a call or come get me after we're done talking tonight. But I'm going to introduce right now Allison Elder. She's with Braun and Gresham. There are some attorneys that work on the program, on the easement program. They're obviously not the only ones out there, but they're ones that have been working really closely, and they have some really good information to share with you tonight. So,
thank you, Laura. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. I know some of you have been to other programs that we've had, and I want to give you an overview about what's going to happen tonight. We're going to have short presentations until about 7, and then we're going to have food and a social time, and you all were very good sports signing in with your name tags, and we are going to use these tonight because the stars will help you know who all is here. And the program is far enough underway now that we have the opportunity to have a lot of the people who are very involved in the program and running the program with us. So I want to introduce a few people before I start my presentation. Grant Ellis is here from the City of San Antonio. Grant is the Special Projects Manager, the Program Manager for the Aquifer Protection Initiative. And I'm going to give you an introduction into conservation easements in general, and then Grant's going to tell you more about the specific program. But he works very closely with several other organizations that are represented here tonight. Francine Romero, Dr. Romero is the head of the city board, which is called the Conservation Advisory Board. They oversee the acquisitions and advise the city council. And then Patrick Boyer and Bruce, how do you pronounce your last name? Freed, thank you. Are here with Green Spaces Alliance, which is one of the nonprofits that assists with coordinating the acquisitions. And right next to them is Rebecca Flack and David Bazanson, who are with the Nature Conservancy, and that is the second nonprofit that is helping to facilitate acquisitions. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my colleagues, David Braun and Cameron Gully, who are two other attorneys that work with me at Braun and Gresham. So usually we have pretty interactive presentations. Tonight I would like to try and move through the presentation quickly because we have food for you here, and we want everybody to stay and visit and interact with the people who are here from the resource side. But as a special treat tonight, we have two landowners who have actually sold conservation easements to the city of San Antonio and live to tell about it. And they are here with Blue Stars, Bob Hickson and Tom Rohde. Thank you so much for coming. So you will have the opportunity tonight after the presentation to meet people who are facilitating the transactions and also people who have been in your shoes a few years earlier and can tell you what it's like to do this. So let me dive into the presentation. Again, I'm going to give you an overview about conservation easements, which can be donated and can also be sold. And I'm going to tell you about sources of money for conservation easements, and Grant's going to tell you specifically about the city program. All of you that are here tonight that are landowners, I know you're interested in protecting your property and seeing it continue the way it is. So this tool is going to be a great match for you, whether you actually end up being a candidate for the city program or otherwise. So that's why it's good to cover this in general. A conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement. It's signed by both the landowner and a land trust, or it could be the city and a landowner, and it's filed at the county courthouse, so it becomes part of your property records that everybody will know about if they do title research, and that will run with the land and always be pertinent to your property. and it's created under Texas law and the Natural Resource Code. It's important to note that it's voluntary. Some people ask if you would ever be forced to do this type of agreement, and the answer is no. The landowners who do this choose to do it of their own free will. So basically, it involves a partnership between the landowner and the land trust, or again, a municipality, to accomplish the goals of both parties. And the goals will be overlapping in many ways, which are to protect the property. They permanently protect the land's intrinsic conservation values. You can do a conservation easement for a period of years, but they're almost always permanent, perpetual. And they can provide income or tax savings to the landowners. So basically, to understand this concept, many of you are familiar with this idea of property interest being a bundle of rights, and you can remove a few rights from the title. And in Texas, we see this with mineral interests, and you see this sometimes with hunting rights or access easements. And this is similar, that you have a piece of property and you selectively remove a few development rights from the title of the land through a conservation easement. Now, landowners have a say in this. The restrictions are negotiated, and the landowners will continue using their property the way they've been using it. Typically, it's for agriculture, recreation, hunting, and no public use is required. There's no requirement in the conservation easement that the public will have access to your property. No rise to public access is given through the easement. So who should consider this? At our law firm, our typical clients are people who want to preserve their land. They're concerned about keeping it in the family. They want to continue using it the way they're using it now. And it's land that has some special conservation value or public benefit. Now, often they are in an area which is, the urban environment is encroaching. They're starting to feel a lot of development pressure. And often they have estate tax concerns. And this is because when you put a conservation easement on your property, it lowers the value of your property. And so when someone passes away, that asset is decreased in their estate. And so that they're able to pass it to the heirs without having such a large estate tax burden. And that is one of the primary motivations for a donated conservation easement. So why would someone do this? The concept that we recognize is that the landowner is interested in unlocking the value of the development pressure from their property. They own the property for rural, residential, recreational uses, and they want to continue using it that way. But a lot of appreciation has occurred because of the market pressures, and they want to separate that market pressure development from their title. And I'm going to give you an example. This is a little case study from a client of the law firm. They bought property in Dripping Springs for $300,000 in 1975, and at that time they planned to use their 600 acres that they purchased for their own residence only and for playing around on, recreation, agriculture. Fast forward nearly 30 years, more than 30 years, and they continue to want to use the property the same way, but now Dripping Springs has grown up all around them. And if they put that 600 acres on the market, it would be purchased right away by a developer who would subdivide it and put in homes. That's the highest and best use of the property. But they have no desire to use it that way. That same 600 acres is now worth $7.2 million, and that appreciation has occurred because of the development potential that I'm talking about. They have no interest in capitalizing on that. They just want to keep using it the way they've always used it. So in that example, By placing a conservation easement on their property, they're able to significantly reduce the value of their property. They're able to get either compensation if they sell it, or an income tax deduction for doing that. And most importantly, they are lowering the value of their property in their estate. Now, the rule of thumb is always asked about how much are we talking about? What is the decrease in value? And you can make some generalizations based on how much this is worth. To actually know, you hire an appraiser and he comes out and values the property, so you get a specific number. But there are expectations that you can have based on what we know, and that is that rural land that is in a rural setting, not too close from a city, will typically have a deduction or a reduction in value, same difference, of 30 to 60%. Near cities, close in, where there's more development pressure, it's more common to see an appraisal estimate that a conservation easement has decreased the property by 50%, 60%, and extreme would be 90%. And that is like highway I-10 frontage between San Antonio and Bernie. So don't be focused on the 90% figure. It does happen, but that's not a usual figure. And what that means to you is that that amount, that decrease in value, is what you would be paid for your conservation easement if you sold it, or it would form the basis of your deduction against your adjusted gross income for your federal estate taxes. So in a sales scenario, if you sold a conservation easement on a ranch and that ranch was worth about $6 million, you would probably receive cash in closing of about $2 million. That's 1/3. That's how I'm figuring that. Someone had asked a question about how that money is treated, and it is income to you, so it would be subject to income tax, depending on how long you would own the property, would dictate the rates. And I'm happy to talk with you about your particular situation after the presentation if you want to know more about that. So to receive financial benefits for a conservation easement, in a sale of a conservation easement you receive cash, and a donation of a conservation easement you receive tax savings, as I've talked about. And the estate taxes are one of the significant drivers because of the reduced value of your estate. Now, many of you are here tonight because you are interested in a sale of a conservation easement. And we work with landowners all over the country who are selling conservation easements. And they're selling them because there's something very special about their property that typically the government is willing to pay for in order to protect. And in our area, we sell conservation easements because they have endangered species habitat on them. That can be the 2 songbirds that are listed, or the many karst invertebrate that are found in caves in our area. It can be a sale of a conservation easement that has a real correlation, is in the middle picture, to the water quality and water quantity, where there's a very close connection geologically between the surface of the property as well as the aquifer. Or it can be wetland and riparian areas. And all over the country, when someone is making a significant change to an area that is considered to be a wetland or a river, then they are supposed to be getting a permit for that from the Corps of Engineers, and they're supposed to be making up for it somewhere else. So that is another source of funding that our clients use. But I do want everyone here to know tonight, as I said earlier, that even if the city program is not a good match for your property, and you can learn more about that from the nonprofit partners that are here tonight, or if you just don't get around to investigating this with the city this time, there are other possible sources of funding. There are local programs like the one we're talking about now. There are statewide programs and there are federal programs. And we're seeing these sources of funds for protecting land increase more and more every year. So just as an example, in Texas, our state passed a farm and ranch land conservation program several years ago. Many states have done this, and it allows the state of Texas to contribute funds that are matched with federal programs so that landowners can be paid basically to keep their property in working agriculture, because we know it's important for a society that we have local sources of food production, and we want to encourage that and keep property open and available for agriculture. And some of you are familiar with the NRCS programs, and I know that they have purchased conservation easements to the west of San Antonio. Some of the ones you may be more familiar with are the Farm and Ranch Protection Program, the Grassland Reserve Program, and the Wetland Reserve Program. And these programs provide those matches for the state funds I was talking about. But then other governmental organizations will have their specific priorities. And as an example, this is a map of the priority regions for the San Antonio River and the San Antonio River Authority. So we're starting to see some sources of funds become available for protecting rivers downstream, and some of the river authorities in Texas have started purchasing conservation easements to protect their river and their watershed. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brant now, because he's really the appropriate person to tell you about the city program, and he'll give you an update about where the city is right now and how the process is working. And then we're going to hear from the director of Green Spaces Alliance, Susan Hughes. They are a conservation easement holder, and we're going to hear from David Bezanson about the work that the Nature Conservancy does, because both of these nonprofit groups are holders of easements in addition to the city of San Antonio. So I want you to have a sense about your options tonight. Okay, Brant.
Thank you, Dalton.
You can just...
I have been in Uvalde County.
Can I say something?
Of course.
There's some people standing in the hall that can't really hear. Is it okay to sit, or if we move the chairs back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, we're in the hall, so. Sure. Just, would it bother you if they sit right over the table?
That doesn't bother me. No, not at all.
Have a seat in a comfy chair.
Week from today.
Okay. Well, yeah. As I was saying, my name is Brant Dalton, Special Projects Manager for the City's Occupant Protection Program. I have been in Uvalde County for the last 2 days straight, so I'm kind of running on coffee and fumes here. But and I have not. I've glimpsed at the PowerPoint, so if I stray off of the slides, forgive me. But I'll just kind of talk about the program and give you guys an update on things. As Allison said, the program has essentially been in operation in one facet or another since the year 2000, when the citizens of San Antonio voted to pass Proposition 3, which was the first aquifer protection program, which provided for the acquisition of land in Bexar County, and only Bexar County, for the Parks Department. And $45 million was appropriated for towards that goal. Much of that land is in and around the Government Canyon area in upper northwest Bexar County. In 2005, we took the issue back to the voters and asked them to approve an expansion of the program, essentially, which allowed for the city to pursue property interests out over other parts of the aquifer, and specifically over areas of the recharge zone in Medina and Uvalde counties, and that may be why a lot of you here are here today. toward the program in 2005, there were the voters allowed for the use of it's a 1/8% sales tax for the collection of $90 million to be used toward the acquisition of property interests, and most prominently conservation easements. But to date, with the 2000 and the 2005 programs, Proposition 3 and then after that Proposition 1, we have protected almost 97,000 acres over the recharge. Here's a map, and the color scheme is a little off here, but there's a narrow section that's lighter than everything else, and that is the recharge zone of the Edwards Aquifer. And the shaded parcels, let me see if I can. The shaded parcels along the recharge zone, here, and then in Medina County here, the one straddling. Those are conservation easements. Those are actually protected lands that the city has purchased conservation easements on. And people ask, why are you spending San Antonio tax dollars purchasing conservation easements over land in Medina and Uvalde counties? And that's actually because of the way the water in the aquifer flows. It flows from west to east. And so the water that citizens in San Antonio are drawing from is actually coming from recharge that is occurring in Medina and Uvalde counties. Here's another map of the aquifer. As you can see, that graded shade, that gray shaded area is the recharge zone. A lot of the questions that we get are related to how we determine what properties to acquire and why we're working on certain with certain landowners, not with others. And it's a valid question that lots of landowners have. And we actually have, I mean, this is a science-based program. We didn't want taxpayer dollars to be, or the program funded by taxpayer dollars to be construed as something that was just rooted in political favoritism, or whether we were taking a dart and throwing it at a wall to determine how we were picking properties. We're actually working with the best available science that we have to date. And so we have a GIS spatial model designed by a scientific evaluation team that gives us it's a software that we plug data into, and based on the variables and the data that we have plugged into it, we get a ranking of the target area that we are acquiring conservation easements on, and it's based on these factors: permeability and the hydrogeology, biology and vegetation. The adjacency factor, 50% towards adjacency, is the proximity or the adjacency of a parcel of land to an existing protected area, whether it be a state park or another conservation easement. It doesn't matter. If it's protected, it will rank a little bit higher, and then size. As Allison said, she introduced Dr. Francine Romero, who's our Conservation Advisory Chair. The Conservation Advisory Board is comprised of members listed here. We have reps from Texas Parks and Wildlife, Edwards Aquifer Authority, San Antonio Water Systems, SARA, Parks and Rec, the Economic Development Foundation, which is a spot that is currently vacant right now. And then we have representatives from Medina and Uvalde counties. And then there's a transaction team, which is called the Land Acquisition. And we call it the LAT for short. But the LAT is made up of Green Spaces Alliance, which is formerly the Bayer Land Trust. And to give you guys a little bit of background, of my background, really a quick introduction here. I have been with the city since November of 2011, not very long. And so we have a new round of funding that I have sort of inherited and look forward to really protecting more land with. But I have worked on the program before. I used to be with Green Spaces Alliance, and I worked on the program almost exclusively while I was there with Green Spaces Alliance. So I was very familiar with the ins and outs of the program before joining the city. and then the Nature Conservancy. And the land acquisition team members are very helpful. They are our eyes and ears in the field, so to speak. They go out, they meet with a lot of the landowners who are interested. They go over the details of the program. They explain the conservation easements to them. And then they will come back to us and sort of give us a rundown. We sit down with them, we sit down with landowners, and we begin negotiations. But they are instrumental in the process because the city staff dedicated to the Edward Aquifer program is only 2 people. And we just don't have enough time or resources to be able to meet with everybody who's interested. What they will do, what the land acquisition team will do with landowners is help them walk through the due diligence steps that are necessary for the program. They will help set up the EAA, the Edwards Aquifer Authority geological report, which is one of the very early things we need to determine how the EAA views properties based on hydrogeology. They will help set up appraisals. They'll help set up phase 1 environmental site assessments. They'll help set up baseline reports, surveys, etc. But they are there to be used as a resource, and then they work with the city to make sure that the landowners understand and are very in the loop on every step of the process. Again, just the land trust introductions, the CAB initial review, the Conservation Advisory Board is a city council appointed advisory board, and the CAB members are instrumental in serving as the oversight committee for the acquisition process. The city and the LAT members will take properties to the CAB, explain all the factors involved in the early stages of negotiations, and the CAB helps guide us, based on the information that they have available to them. The diligence and then the negotiation, I think I've talked about it enough. I'm happy to answer questions. If I'm going through this too fast, I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. And then CAB will, again, make a final review based on the information that has been processed through the due diligence stages, and they will make a recommendation for City Council. City Council will be the final step in the acquisition process. City Council has to approve all of the rules. And then living with an easement, and I can talk about living with an easement, but I don't live with an easement. I'm actually going to introduce a couple of landowners right now who have been through the city program, who have been through the process. Tom Rohde, who is based out of, who lives in Medina County, and Bob Dixon, who has property in Uvalde County, are both here. And I would just invite them to stand up and maybe give just a couple of words of their experiences working with the city. Yeah, say as much or as little as you like.
I see you want to come up here.
Yeah.
But, anyway, we started out in 2005 or 2006 talking about a conservation easement. For our property, it's in northwest Medina County, and we're on the Hondo Creek, and we're all in the recharge zone. A lot of pros and cons that we weighed over the years. When we first looked at the program, I had enough doubt in my mind that I said, well, I don't think we want to do this. And we kind of passed on the transaction for the first 2 or 3 years. During that time, I had a good many neighbors and actually some of my clients that went into the conservation easement program. We walked through the whole deal. I had the chance to see what happened with them over that period of years, that period of time. To date, and I probably have been involved in one way or another with 12, 13 conservation easement transactions, and I have not had one single landowner that's come back to me and said, sure wish I hadn't done that. Going back all the way actually to the year 2000, when there were some conservation easements done around the Medina Lake area that were not this program, not the city's program, but well, it may have been the city's program, but they were not the same type of deal. But anyway, none of them have ever come back to me and said, hey, we wish we hadn't done it. Our experience, we closed our transaction in June of 2010, and we've had the only real contact that has been the Edwards Aquifer Authority team that has been contracted with the city of San Antonio to make the annual inspection. Have been out on the ranch. They've set up, I think, on ours 6 monitoring points, which is really a steel post in the ground that is their location. They have a GPS coordinate for that spot. They take pictures all around in a 360-degree circle around that, just to see that, you know, what's happened. Of course, last year when they were out, I was embarrassed to have them out because even though we've removed all the cattle from the ranch last year, it still looks like, you know. But anyway, this year we invite them to come back out because it look a lot better. But our experience from the landowner standpoint has been excellent. No complaints at all. We've also tried to help the Nature Conservancy did ours. I worked closely with Bear Land Trust or the Green Space Alliance as well. And these guys are great to work with. They explain to you what the document that you sign means. They help you walk through it. But the experience as far as any interference with what we do with our land has been negative. Anyway, I'll be around for the question.
How you doing? My name is Bob Hickson, and I'm here not just because of the free refreshments tonight. And I only have good things to say, so I'm not a plant by Grant Ellis or Rebecca Flag. But we own property up in northeastern Uvalde County between the major cities of Utopia and Concan. And Rebecca Flack with the Nature Conservancy and Grant with the Green Space Alliances helped us with the city of San Antonio form a conservation easement a number of years ago. I think we have like half a dozen of my neighbors who we all joined together, and I think it's like 5,500 some acres that we collectively put together. I think one of the criteria is if you can get your neighbors involved, it's really good for everybody. So, you know, I can guarantee you that everybody here has a question, probably one critical question that's going to make or break this for them. And I can tell you that between the 7 of us in this little valley, there's not a question that you have that one of us didn't ask. So either now or later during refreshments, I'd be happy to answer specific questions. And you know you're going to talk to all your neighbors, and I've heard all the questions, so I'd be happy to try to go over them. One of the reasons we did this, I have 4 children. Several of my neighbors have 3 to 5 children each. You can see where this is going. Fragmentation. You all know how hard the summer was last year with the reservoirs and aquifers. This isn't just about the city of San Antonio. This is about your reservoir, your water well. This is about each one of our properties. I think it's a win-win situation when we conserve our water for our ranches and when we conserve the water for the city as well. I don't know how to work my phone either.
It don't work today.
So we could see that the fragmentation was just going to keep on going, and there was no end in sight. I think it's safe to say now, I don't think the city will take the funds back or the conservation easement will be nullified. But I wanted to form a conservation easement before there was money involved. The money is a real blessing, quite frankly. Not to go into great details, but many of the neighbors paid off mortgages, bought a new tractor, paid off debts, and it's really helped the area. So there's the fragmentation. I know that many of you are actively farming, ranching, hunting on your land. It's been significant cash influx to our area, but it's also kept the land intact. And it hasn't changed any of our activities. Nothing has really changed on any of the activities that any of the neighbors are doing. I don't think there's been one conflict since, I haven't heard of any of the neighbors having a conflict since we first formed our easement. I know that I'm going to get reprimanded by the legal staff here later, but someone asked about taxes, or taxes were mentioned on the money you receive, and I'm not an expert on it at all. And so I'm sorry if I say this, but I'm not pushing this for anybody, but we formed a 1031 tax exchange thing. I can't tell you the details, but it defers taxes if you're worried about the monies that you receive. And you can make that an investment in new land, but anyway. So that's, there's other ways of seeing the funds that you're getting. Unless you plan to sell in the near future, unless you plan to sell off part of your land, you know that the land is very valuable, but you're not going to see any money on it until you sell. So here you have a big cash influx, and I'm not trying to dwell on the cash. There's way beyond the monetary. I know that many people in here, you love your land, you care about it, you respect it, and you want to see it taxed. So it's not just about the money. But I think it's a win-win situation. Like I say, we've gone through all the questions that you can imagine. I'm not going to stand up here and go through them all with you, but I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one later and tell you some of the questions the neighbors had and some of the questions that we had in return. Rebecca, Nature Conservancy, and the Green Space Alliances in the city, I can tell you that it was a great experience. We learned lots of things. I don't know how many of you have an ag tax treatment, ag exemption. And I don't know how many of you have like a wildlife ag tax treatment. Some of you may have a wildlife ag tax treatment. Tom mentioned those monitoring stations. They're little 4-foot poles, and you have to go find them if you want to find them. But those count as a survey, and that can be reported to your county, and it acts as a practice, a qualifying practice for your ag treatment. And it's completely free. You get maps and reports, and I kind of thought that was really neat to see the maps and reports on the wildlife and biology. And all of my children were all in favor of this. You can still sell the land. Your children can still sell the land in the future if they decide to, intact. So they can inherit as normal. They can. So none of our activities have been affected. And I only have really great things to say about it. If there was something that had gone wrong, meantime, I tell you, but I see it as a win-win situation. So if there's any questions right now.
Did your kids build a house?
Yes, there are. I don't know what's changed in the last number of years, but you have certain development areas, and you already know where your favorite spots are on the property that you want to build in the future. And you can pick out these development spots where you'll build, and also where you drill additional water wells. And so you have freedom negotiating with the city and Nature Conservancy and Green Space Alliances to determine where you want your development areas and where you want your water wells. And so that's something that there's a lot of give and take, and we're very flexible, at least with all of our neighbors, as to where you can build cabins and where you can put facilities and water wells and stuff. So that's a really good deal. That's a good question. Now I know that's a big concern, is where can I develop? But I don't think any of our neighbors, everybody had the spot in mind where they want to put that cabin or where they wanted to drill a new water well. And I don't think there were any conflicts with any of those.
How long does it take to start to finish?
Pardon?
How long does it take to start to finish?
Start to finish. I think I kind of bugged the Nature Conservancy and Green Space for a while, but I think the whole process was 6 to 9 months. Roughly 6 to 9 months.
Sometimes longer, but that's
6 to 9 months roughly. And the funding, I think, was probably from start to finish till funding occurs is just short of a year.
On the houses that you want to put there, was that part of the Conservancy then, or is it yours?
The cabins,
The
or
cabins
the
or the
buildings or
houses.
houses that you build.
Say you had 4 children, you want to put 4 houses, they'll still be in the Conservation Easement.
The land as a whole is still in the Conservation Easement, but you have development areas. I may be saying what you want, but you have development areas where you're allowed to put up structures, houses, barns, and build your water wells. And we had two areas that we chose to have development areas on. And so there's enough means for all 4 of our cases to put their place and we can have it whatever in the future.
There are usually negotiated building envelopes that we, that are designated on each particular property. And then there's also a maximum impervious cover provision within each of the covered conservation easements as well, and that is typically 1/2 of 1% of the total square footage on the land.
We looked at that impervious cover clause in our contracts, and there was hardly any way we could figure that we would ever reach that maximum. I mean, you look at the roads, you look at the buildings, and we calculated, we tripled it, we still didn't reach the allowable
impervious cover.
Braun, do you want to explain what that means?
Yeah, basically, I mean, impervious cover is defined in the documents as, areas of the property that don't allow for water to, sink back into the land, essentially. And so that means some improved roads, houses, barns, most structures of any kind are counted toward your maximum impervious cover. Your existing impervious cover will be calculated at the time of the baseline report is created for your property, but then there is going to be the maximum allowable impervious cover, which is, like I said, 1/2 of 1% of the square footage, and acres is what we normally discuss when we're talking about size of properties, but the square footage actually controls the value.
How about if you're clearing brush and you blow a hydraulic hose and get a hydraulic hose all over everything? Environmental catastrophe for the guy that did it?
Yeah, that's something that we would have to work through. There are provisions within the document for what sort of chemicals you are and are not allowed to use on the property, but then there's a list.
What about mineral restrictions, like drilling or anything like that?
It's typically not allowed in the
I'm probably going over what
Yeah, I think we just,
Let's say I'm a geologist also, former geologist, and you asked about drilling. Many of the areas that we're looking at, that the city's looking at, are in the recharge zones or the contributing zones, which quite often are starting to get into the hills a little bit. And you never say never about oil and gas, but much of the oil and gas stuff that's going on right now is well south of the city. And much of the recharge zone, much of the contributing zone is, I hate to tell you, very, very minor chance of commercial production in the future, unfortunately. And so it's much more probable that the value of the land and water is where the real resources are. If you were counting to south of the north east.
Would this stop an eminent domain by, say, textile?
Sadly, no. Conservation easements are another tool in your belt against eminent domain, but they do not trump it.
Might mention that I believe that between the EAA and the conservation easements that were in place in Medina County, we effectively moved a proposed pipeline west all the way to, I think, McKinney County.
Right.
So
there was a pipeline that was scheduled to come down through, I think, through Medina County,
right.
and there were comments submitted by the Edwards Aquifer Authority, the city of San Antonio chimed in, and that was actually rerouted. That pipeline was rerouted. So like I said, it's not foolproof. It's not, but it is nice. It is another tool in your belt. Real quick, Allison, before I just want to sum up real quick. I also just saw Jim Blair, who is here with Sarah, San Antonio River Authority. He is actually also on the Conservation Advisory Board. He was hiding in the corner, and I didn't see him. So I wanted to say, acknowledge Jim. But also, there was a slide that Allison showed earlier that listed the word partnership, and I think that's the key word there. I come from a conservation background, and I have worked on the land trust side of things, so I understand the importance of land trust or holder of the easement and landowner relationships, and that is what the city of San Antonio is getting into when we purchase a conservation easement. This is a partnership that we are entering into with the landowner, and it is in our best interest to maintain healthy relations with the landowners that we are working with, and so if anybody has any questions for me afterwards, I'm happy to chat. Thank you.
We want to have just a few more minutes of the presentation, so I'm going to ask Susan and David to come up. These are the two representatives of the nonprofit partners, and they're going to tell you a little bit about the work that they do, and then I will remind you of all the people who are not red stores tonight, so that you can go around and get some food and visit with the landowners and the representatives that are here. Please come up.
May I ask you a question
Yes,
about
ma'am.
one of your slides? It was the transaction team,
Yes.
the survey part, legal descriptions, maps, exhibits. What are exhibits?
Well, the question is, what are exhibits? And Grant had mentioned the development areas. Often in the conservation easement, you will have areas that are treated differently than most of the property. It may be that it's a development area that you're identifying that says, I can build a house and do more things in this area, or it may be a no development zone that you agree nothing, no new buildings are going to happen in this area. And those are filed of record with the conservation easement. They're maps, they're pictures that show where those areas are, and those are your exhibits. Okay? Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see all of you here. And this is just such an exciting opportunity for us all. I live vicariously through you because I'm not a landowner, but I love this land, and I'm a native Texan. I've grown up here, and nothing makes me happier than to go out and get scratched up by some brush. I know it's pretty strange, but it's true. And the fact that you're here and you're interested in conserving your land and having it there for future generations really warms my heart. And that's why we're in this business, is to make it possible, make it easier for you to decide whether or not you want to do that. And if you do, to help you through that process. And that's what we do here. It's a cool job. We get to meet all of you. We get to go out and see your land. We get to help you wade through the paperwork. And at the end of it, sometimes we get to go out to lunch. So I went to lunch with Tom Brody once. I always hold him to that. But we'll be here, and we have more information about green spaces, and we also have our business cards and other stuff. So you feel free to get hold of us. You can talk to us. You can talk to Nature Conservancy. You can talk to both of us. We're a local land trust. We only operate in this area. Nature Conservancy certainly operates in this area, but they also operate internationally. So they're a different structure than we are, but we're all good people. So we're all out here for the same thing, and that's to protect this part of Central Texas that we all love so well. Anybody here not love Central Texas? Raise your hand. No.
Well, and I don't have a whole lot to add, but I'm David Pazanson. I'm with the Nature Conservancy, and as Susan said, we work in a lot of different places. We work in every state and in 30 different countries, and we work in the San Antonio area because we really believe it's a unique priority. There are not a lot of places, I'm not sure there are any places in the United States where this many people are this dependent on a drinking water supply, which is a groundwater resource. And so we're going to try to work with you and help conserve that resource. I have worked for the Nature Conservancy statewide for 5 years and negotiated a bunch of conservation easements. Before that, I worked for another organization that was a statewide organization that did conservation easements. So, I've done quite a lot of them. And as Tom said, I don't know any landowner who said, I wish I didn't do that. So, but as Bob said, everybody's got different issues and different questions. So we're going to be here to hopefully answer those questions. And by all means, come talk to us. and we appreciate you being here.
Okay, so that's going to conclude our formal remarks. We brought some materials. Can I borrow your picture? We brought some materials here tonight that you can pick up. If we run out, just contact somebody from the law firm, and we would be happy to mail them to you. But it talks about conservation easements and what some of the pros and cons are. And there's a little story in here that talks about the Hicksons and their neighbors. I hope this one was in here. Yes, the last one. Called Good Guidance Makes for Good Stewardship. I had the pleasure to work with some of the landowners in that group. So that story in particular I would draw to your attention. But we have the nonprofit folks here. We have David, and we have Rebecca, and we have Susan, and we have Patrick and Bruce, and those are here to be resources to you. From the city side, we have Grant, and then from the Conservation Advisory Board, we have Dr. Romero and Jim Blair. Jim, where are you? He's hiding.
Make him talk.
Say something. Jim, I want to say, Jim and I are two of the few people that have been working on this program since its inception in 2000. And before Grant had his job at Green Spaces, I had this job and Susan's job. I was the first executive director of Fair Land Trust and got to know some landowners from that position. And some people here were board members and resource people for Green Spaces. So Jim and I are the old timers now, right?
Yes, we are.
Right. And then we have two landowners here, Bob Hickson and Tom Rohde, that are here with Blue Stars to visit with you tonight, and the three attorneys from my firm, myself, and David Braun and Cameron Belly. So please stay and visit and enjoy each other, get to know your neighbors, enjoy the food, and we will be here to answer all of your questions for you as long as you want to visit. Thank you very much for coming.